Hello and welcome to ABNcast, a new podcast for aviation professionals brought to you by Aviation Business News. My name's Lee Hayhurst, Editorial Director of ABN, and I'm here in our temporary ABNcast studio at the World Aviation Festival in Lisbon. In this first ever ABNcast, I'll be talking to some key delegates at this year's event, where 5,000 people who work in aviation and associated industries have gathered to discuss the future of the industry, the challenges it faces like sustainability, fuel prices and demand, and the role technology will play in overcoming them. First up, we speak to technology giant IBM, one of the headline sponsors of this year's World Aviation Festival. Okay, so welcome to ABNcast. We've set up our studio on the floor of the show today, so there's a little bit of background noise, but hopefully you can hear us perfectly fine. I'm joined by Dee Waddell, who is the Global Managing Director for Travel and Transportation Industries at technology giant IBM. Now, look, IBM, it's a brand we all know. We can even picture the logo. I think all of us can do that. But if you asked us what do you do, that might be a bit of a tricky one. What is IBM's sort of core mission these days, and how does that reflect in what you do with the aviation sector?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. Glad to be here at the world's largest aviation conference, the World Aviation Festival. We've been a sponsor for, 7-8 years, as I recall, if even not longer. It's been a wonderful gathering of CEOs, executives, but more importantly, people that are doing the real work within airlines. It's a wonderful time for them to come to get together, learn about some of the innovations, and hopefully make a difference in our world. Because, personally, and I'll get into this a little bit, but personally, the aviation and travel bring the world together at a time where sometimes we focus on some of the diversity aspects and the things that takes us apart, versus we're all unified and we're all similar. Whatever we cry the same way, we love the same way. It brings a human perspective to this, and as you know, personally as well as from an IBM perspective, that's a real focus of ours. So again, pleased to be here. But I think overall IBM, I think there are a lot of people that know the old IBM with the PCs, with a lot of mainframes or whatever you'd like to call software in many historical ways. But IBM has really transformed over the past number of years. Now, I've been at IBM almost 8 years, and I've seen and witnessed and helped lead the transformation within IBM to really focus on how do we lead clients in the next generation? How do we help transform them to drive value and impact on the world? I think that's number one. But what we've said is our strategy is hybrid cloud, which is we recognize that all of our clients are going to be using various clouds.
Right.
And we have technology and tools and services that drive that agenda to make it easier for you to track, transform on your cloud, because a lot of people have gone to cloud and they still have a data center. They still have data that needs to traverse the network to be able to get to the various clouds. There's security, which oftentimes we forget in some of these discussions, that has to be at the very beginning of this and has to be in a coordinated fashion. So there's hybrid AI. That's one of the strategies we have for an IBM from a technology perspective. What makes it
hybrid?
Well, hybrid is I have multiple clouds.
Okay.
Or a data center, or sitting in some location somewhere. But we have data and systems that are all over. Not everything's on a cloud. I know we'd all like to be able to get there, but there's also challenges with that as well. So that's one, hybrid cloud. The other is about AI. We call it AI for business. And this is all about taking the wonderful lessons we've learned with Watson AI. And what I mentioned even this year on stage, of course, with Tony Douglas, CEO of Riyadh Air, and what they're doing. They're talking about being Tony talked about being the very first digitally born airline. And so we've been helping them with their digital strategy, and it's a wonderful time for Saudi Arabia, their Vision 2030, and Tony's actually taking that vision and executing. So we talked about that today. But AI, it's not about the fun, generative, AI about creation of songs, content creation. I'm obviously in area of the world of media, it's shaking things up quite a bit because it's relatively easy for anybody to go into ChatGPT and create some content. But that's going to be there. But how do businesses take advantage of this? So those are our two strategies from IBM, and I call it kind of a new day for IBM, But we've got brand new software suite that we've just announced called WatsonX on the AI side. It has WatsonX.data, WatsonX.ai, and the most important piece is governance. And some of our competitors have not thought through this as much as we have around the explainability, about the trustability and security of these AI models.
Yeah.
And anyway, it'll be interesting. But those are the things. It's a new day for IBM.
There's so much to go at on AI, isn't there? And,
there is.
And it was mentioned on stage many times.
Yeah.
All the CEOs were asked about it.
It was great to see them talking about it.
It was, and actually the message was, look, some of us have been using it for 10 years. This is nothing new. It's in our businesses. And actually, when you're in the aviation industry, you know that's the case. It's in predictive maintenance and so on. It's just actually how it's going to develop further. So really, in some ways, AI is already with us. It's already providing efficiencies, and that's the key thing, isn't it? But I think
it is.
That's what they said this morning. We can be more efficient. We can meet other challenges at the same time.
But I don't think people are really understanding how it will impact, because we're only at the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the compute and the level, we call it machine learning, right? This is where you still have to direct the AI based on the data, right? So your data needs to be in an orderly fashion that you can actually bring pieces together and then have these points and these algorithms that will point it in the right direction. Where, as we get into deep learning and even true AI, it's going to be different because the systems themselves, it's not coded to come out, and these, what we call these foundational systems, or these foundational platforms, these foundational platforms, this is where the data sits, and this is where generative AI come in. They call large language models, right? Where they've actually had these large language, and then the computer is figuring out how to then piece together the answer. And that needs to be explained, because people are saying, well, how did you come up with those hallucinations, or whatever the issue may be? It's critical for the AI to be able to explain it.
And you mentioned you shared the stage earlier with Riyadh Air, with Tony, the CEO of Riyadh Air. He's saying they want to be the first truly digitally native airline.
Yeah.
You know, if it's coming from Saudi, the money and the investment won't be an issue. They will do what they do. Is that where we're looking, do you think, for true innovation to come out from in the aviation sector, from that part of the world where they can invest, there isn't the legacy, and they can go from scratch?
Yeah, that was the main point, because every CEO up on stage today, and we had 4 others than Tony, it was all, to be frank, there were concerns about geopolitical events, sustainability, and it was fairly negative. Oh, woe is us, woe is me, and the challenges of the day continue to drive the discussion. Where I thought it was refreshing, and hopefully, the audience felt it refreshing as well. But we got up on stage, we said, yeah, there's plenty of events. And this industry has been resilient, whether it be from the COVID pandemic, whether it be SARS way back, financial crises. This industry has survived because people need to travel. This is not a want in many respects. People need to travel. The world is better for travel. Anyway, so the point is, we had this positive message about harnessing disruptive change. And AI is a disruptive change, but it's positive. And that was the core message today, is how do you leverage positive technology or industry changes? And what I'll just say is, Riyadh, without some of that legacy, everybody is watching to say, because they're not limited, whether it be their partnerships, whether it be their technology, they can kind of choose a path and blaze. We don't have many trailblazers in the airline space, and if they are, they're pretty regional.
Yeah.
Right? We've had startups in the regional space, but nothing of the likes of Riyadh Air. So that's going to be a unique one, but no legacy, and this digital first. And Tony mentioned on stage the average age in Saudi Arabia is 29 years old. They all have mobile phones. The penetration of mobile phones is significant. They can tap into this like probably no others, and we're trying to help them. We've continued to appreciate a wonderful partnership there, and we're going to continue to do so. He
actually said they all have Apple phones. We'll get onto that in a minute, because I know IBM's got an interesting collaboration with Apple. But you said trailblazers a minute ago, and that's interesting. And in this sector where there is a risk-averse sense, I was talking about it actually last night with somebody from one of the major airlines, I won't mention which, who's in there trying to change their business and finds it difficult because it's so risk-averse. And it has to be, because on the operational side, you cannot take any risks.
Safety. Yeah,
Does it require trailblazers like Tony, like Riyadh Air, to go out there, demonstrate what's possible, show that it makes sense, show that brings in better revenues, more efficiencies, and then the others will follow. And if that does happen, do you think speed of change might come along as well on the back of that?
We will see. I have both a positive outlook and a negative outlook, to be frank. We are fast followers. The airlines tend to think that they are ahead of the curve, but when you really open up the cover and you compare to other industries, we're a bit behind the times. And we talk a good game, but the investment, I mean, just with some of the challenges we've had, but the investment portfolio that aviation has generally, and then the high costs around planes, technology and advancing of these innovative type approaches have not seen the investment required and comparative to other industries. So there's that fact. But there's also this concept of it needs an inflection point. And the industry lacks these inflection points to make it in technology. So for instance, when we have, whether it be SARS or COVID or geopolitical events or 9/11, we put it, so for instance, 9/11 caused all airlines to beef up security. We took that mantra, we drove it, and that was like no other change we've had in the past. And airlines grabbed it, they knew it, they drove it. But we haven't seen something similar on the digital side where someone's a real trailblazer. They all talk, look, when I ran United.com and Mileage Plus back in the day, that was, oh my goodness, almost 20 years ago. And we're still talking about the same things. My mobile app, and I love the legacy that we've left because we've kind of kept this in the core, but we're still talking about the same topics. But what's interesting about Riyadh and what's happening in Saudi Arabia is they have funding, they have a vision, and they are driving to a new world. So they already have a natural viewpoint to the world and eyes watching them. So I do think that other airlines will watch what Riyadh Air does and try to quickly follow and try to then address some of these constraints that they have on their back with some of the legacy pieces, not just even in tech. I mean, there's plenty of tech legacy, but there's also business legacy as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Apple relationship.
Yeah.
It's been around a long time. It's not a new thing. You just explain how it came about, why it came about, and why it's relevant today.
Yeah. So, we had this wonderful opportunity, as you know. Apple had, this is back in the 2014, if I recall, don't quote me on I think it was 2014, where Apple finally was seeing the opportunity to get into businesses and really get into the B2B space. And this is according to me, but there was this opportunity because they'd been, rigorously focused on human design, on, B2C, I'll call it. But what happened is they realized that their phones, and I was actually one of the earlier, when I was CIO at Amtrak, I had actually brought in and I made a big bet, frankly a career bet, on the iPhone 4, which was before they'd really warmly welcomed corporations and business. But anyway, in 2014, Tim Cook and our CEO at that point, Chair and CEO, Ginny Rometty, made a deal. And we said IBM will be the creator of apps for business. So it was essentially mobile for business. We call it AI for business today. Back then it was mobile for business.
Right.
So we had a mantra to create 100 apps across IBM for all industries. And we were fortunate in the airline space to have the right people at the right time with the right expertise and the right contacts at Apple that knew, and it's obviously a very visible industry, and we have created this suite with Apple together in their design labs. We've actually got a wonderful partnership that we continue to this day, that we've created this suite where airlines can basically adopt our portfolio of 18 apps, or 1 or 2 or 5 or whatever it may be, and then be able to tap into essentially 80-90% of an app that's already been developed with the likes of, for instance, our pilot app was done with Singapore Airlines. Our onboard app was done with United. So we had these kind of cornerstone partnerships, and we had built these apps. And it's a wonderful foundation, and we're actually here at the show talking, with Apple today about spatial computing.
Okay.
And, the next...
Go on, explain that.
Well, so spatial computing is wonderful. It starts bringing together VR, AR, and all of these things with the Vision Pro that's coming out next year. And we've already had some opportunities to, like, visual inspection, predictive maintenance, and wait to see on that. But if you can attend, we've actually, for those who are listening, you may be listening after the fact, but come and talk to us, because this space is really interesting, and you're going to see some virtual worlds kind of collide. And we're really excited about bringing that into our apps and making that not just with one set of customers or employees, but about the whole suite.
So you've currently got 18 apps devised for aviation.
That's right.
With a kind of Apple philosophy on beauty of design and
we've
ergonomics.
all done it. We remove management. It's the whole wonderful Apple design approach.
Okay.
We remove management. We said go to the pilots.
But there's more to come, obviously.
Well, there's more to come. We have kind of our apps set, but now it's about taking these apps, leveraging it as a portfolio, sharing the data. So, in the airline industry, we've got these oftentimes unionized workers that are so siloed. And this is an opportunity where technology can bring them together. So the onboard, believe it or not, the in-station people, the gate, actually can talk with and communicate with the people on board, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And pilots can talk with the onboard staff. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Dispatchers can talk. There's kind of this age-old dispatchers don't like pilots and pilots don't. There's all of this that have been history that I think the technology can solve.
Yeah, and this takes us into the other great challenge. I know with too much on challenges, but it is a challenge of people.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that the aviation sector needs to get over, it's the fact that it hasn't got enough people. So it needs technology to improve the employee experience. You improve the employee experience, the CX takes care of itself. We've got a happier staff, and they deliver a better experience on the front end. So this is really key.
It is about employee experience,
and I think this is one of the challenges. Maybe it's not talked about enough. But
I totally agree.
Well,
I wish. We've been talking about for decades. CX, customer experience, and passenger experience, but the whole Apple relationship was based on employee. So it was about the human potential to bridge gaps, to address problems that have never been addressed otherwise. Yeah. And airlines were just such a great example about people that don't traditionally work together in separate unions, have separate motivations, but all deliver a similar product, which is a seat on an airplane. So I do think it was a unique opportunity for the airlines and us with Apple to bridge this gap with technology, and it continues to be exciting.
Let's talk about collaboration for a bit. IBM, massive company, global. There might be a perception that you can just go and solve all the problems yourselves. Aviation businesses themselves might think actually we don't need to work with anybody else. Not sure that's how it really is. There's everyone says ecosystem. It's a bit of a throwaway word, but it's definitely true in the sector. Incredibly so. So any solutions that come along are going to have to be a collaboration, aren't they? Are we collaborating enough? Are we looking at using I know there's startups here this week, so they are here, they're talking, and they're trying to get in front of people. Are we embracing the startup mentality enough? What do you want to see as IBM in terms of collaboration with the ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I'll just say a couple things on the IBM, and then I'll get to the startups. But IBM has this rich history of open source and open computing, I'll call it. And we want to continue to drive that. We acquired Red Hat here a few years back about the open platform on that. So we have a rich history, and we're continuing to build. But we've actually recently even pivoted more into the partnership. I'll call it the ecosystem and the partnership, but really to be a platform company. And that entails working with partners on the technology side, whether that be additional consulting companies that work together and leverage whether it be Watson X or whether it be some of our other Watson technologies or any of the technologies we have on the hardware, software. But there's also on the consulting side. I'll be honest, we've actually renewed our relationships. There's been a past with, if you remember, we actually created the original Sabre reservation system together with American Airlines. When it was not Sabre, it was American Airlines. So we have this rich history, and it's been fun to see because over the past number of years, we've renewed some of these relationships. We've signed a global strategic relationship with Amadeus. We have wonderful partnerships with SAP, with Salesforce, with even up and coming Sabre on pros, and there's just a number of these where we've tried to be agnostic and really focus on our clients from the consulting side of the business, but also the technology side is looking for partners beyond just even IBM consulting. So it's wonderful to see a platform business and the ecosystem go. Now, in the aviation space, you've heard me talk about this. I think we haven't done enough to support startups in the aviation space. So and you saw me on stage trying to be a judge of one of the startup competitions yesterday. It was a great experience, and it's wonderful to feel the energy of these ideas and so forth. But in order for them to be able to be successful, they need to find value for the airlines. And the airlines oftentimes have overlooked or not given them the space. So I'm really pleased that World Aviation Festival is actually bringing together some of those startups and trying to see the investment side as well as then the product side come together to have value for the airlines.
And I believe the winner yesterday was a British startup called Interlnkd, wasn't it?
Yes, it was Interlnkd.
We've interviewed for this podcast, so
Good.
that was really fortuitous because we did that.
Good luck to them, and I thought it was a great presentation.
Yeah. Before we finish, just a few words on the aviation sector's prospects. A lot of that was talked about this morning with the CEOs. Demand side seems to be, everyone's not an issue. It's there, okay? It's actually servicing that's going to be sort of the issue. Even with fuel prices, they seem to just be keen to sort of downplay that because the demand side will offset the fuel price issues.
Yeah,
and we've been there. And
key message this morning,
we've been there before with fuel prices. We'll get through it. How do you feel as a sort of an outside observer looking in, but with a vested interest in aviation?
Oh yeah, well,
what's your feeling?
What's interesting is you only get these CEOs at these conferences to share openly how they see demand, and I think Guy from Bloomberg always does a fantastic job. We've got a few of these luminaries that have done this, open up the CEOs, talk about what they're seeing. But it was good to hear that. Literally, even when there were questions, I'm talking about Luis's, CEO of IAG, there was nothing in their forecast or horizon that they saw demand diminishing. So the good news is there will be demand, and actually I think there will be increased demand for business travel. We'll see. I don't think it's going to come back nearly as fast as it was before COVID, but that will have additional margin for the airlines to tap into, which I'm going to go into because it's not just about revenue, it's about good revenue. Right. It's about profitable revenue that then they have, that they can pay back their loans if they had them during COVID or whatever it may be, and invest in this next generation, this transformation agenda. See, they're all struggling. Not everybody is as fortunate as Saudi Arabia and Riyadh to have no history and be able to invest with the money, backed by the public investment funds. But these airlines have got to make their money. So they need to be able to free up money to then invest. And some airlines are doing it better. We have wonderful partners, and we're trying to focus on the ones that are willing to work with us in a partnership way to make significant and material impact and value for them. So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. We've heard recently there's the COVID issue, the COVID sort of period has left the industry without revenue for 4 years or so. So there's lost revenue there. There's money that's not in the industry. So that's going to be a challenge for whatever industry, but particularly for aviation. But there was certainly a very positive outlook, and outside of a few regulatory issues which keep cropping up, I think we had 4 or 5 CEOs out there who are looking forward to the future with a great deal of positivity, and I suppose you are as well.
A lot of positivity, and that's always good with these conferences. Yeah. But that's what our world needs. It needs a unifying voice of positivity. There's always challenges, and we talked about this just before we started. But if there's only negative challenges that we look at, what are the problems? But we've got to balance that out with the positivity that bringing people together. After COVID, maybe some of us have had these personal experiences where we didn't see people for years. And we finally have, and the relationships we recognize are so important, so fulfilling, and having a purpose-driven environment is so important. Yeah. So positive's good.
And that's why events like this are so great. You get that face-to-face time. So it's great to have face-to-face time with you. Dee, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your
Thanks
time.
for having me again.
Best of luck, and I think we'll see you at World Aviation Festival next year.
Great.
Thanks very much. Cheers. So welcome, Anke Zhu, to the ABNcast studio here at World Aviation Festival. Anke, tell me who you are, who you work for, and what you're doing here.
Hi Lee, thanks for having me here on the podcast at the World Aviation Festival. So my name is Anke Zhu. I'm in the travel industry for more than 20 years, but work now as a VP Business Development for Chain4Travel.
Okay, and Chain4Travel, explain. What do you do?
So the name says it all. We are building a blockchain for the travel industry. Although I don't want to talk too much about blockchain technology, rather about the benefits that we can offer for the travel industry.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You don't want to talk about blockchain, but it's hard to avoid it when you're called Chain4Travel. But it's one of those things, a bit like AI. AI has been a big discussion point this week, and it's almost similar where people don't maybe understand it, they fear it. And the reason you don't want to talk about blockchain is because there's lots of misapprehensions about it. Is that still the case, or is that starting to go away?
Actually, what I see, you had a lot of hype, of course, like you have now with AI. Then you had a lot of bad news for the crypto industry. But what we see in the not only in our industry but across industries, that now blockchain as a technology is looked at, and under the radar there are there's building blockchains for industries. For example, in the logistics industry or the luxury goods industry, they are building their industry blockchains, and we are building as well. And we are having a lot of companies that we are building the infrastructure that built on top. Decentralized application, and blockchain offers the opportunity to look differently at business problems and enable new business models.
So just for the layman, who doesn't really want to understand the ins and outs of blockchain, just explain what Chain4Travel has been set out to do for travel, how things change in a Chain4Travel world.
So first of all, Chain4Travel is the facilitator of the Camino network, which is the blockchain for the travel industry globally. And the main element of blockchain technology for me is really the peer-to-peer network, global, which is perfect for the travel industry because we are very fragmented and we need to find a way to work easier together with global, stable digital currencies that avoid the high payment costs that we have. And also avoid the many API connections that we have to do in the travel industry to actually get the content that we want to sell, or distribute. Yeah. So as a network, you can vision is you connect once, and then you can sell in the network with the partner that are already identified in the network via know your customer, know your business procedure. Or you can buy from the network, and especially here, the World Aviation Festival, we talk a lot with the airlines, of course, about NDC distribution, offer order, etc. And there are pain points for airlines because they have to take care of a lot of implementations, API implementations. And on the other side, on the distribution side, the tour operator has to maintain or connect through average 850 APIs. To be able to buy and sell. Yeah. So with the network, you have a communication network already in place to connect once, and then you can talk to the other search book.
It's kind of the foundation of to a modern retailing.
It's exactly, yeah. And it's a new infrastructure. It's decentralized, and most importantly, it's governed by the travel companies. So we have a travel company consortium in place, which is comprised of the validators that validate the transaction together in the network. And most importantly, they take the decisions for the network, what kind of milestones we need to achieve, and control the transaction fees, which is a cent or a fraction of a cent.
That's one of the hard things to get your head around a bit, I think, is that competitors in the network will be validating each other's transactions. So you think, well, why would they do that if they're competing with them?
Well, the advantages to it, I mean, we're in a decentralized network, which is very secure. It enables also collaboration. Airlines, for example, they collaborate anyway with interlining, for example. And you need to collaborate along the customer survey. So you need to have to share the customer data if the customer allows it, of course. So there are a lot of benefits to that, and we have here at World Aviation Festival an industry that collaborates in a lot of points. Yeah. Plus, when you share the transaction data, there will be a minimum of data shared, and there will be a decentralized storage place where the other private data is shared for the company.
Okay. Obviously, you're here this week to talk to aviation professionals, airlines. You've got a number of airlines already working with you. Is this gaining traction on the airline side in particular?
I think so. Yeah. It's especially for airlines. We had several meetings with the Arabian Air Carrier Organization, which represents 35 carriers, more than 45 carriers in the Middle East. And we proposed, or we presented the project, and they were really enthusiastic. They will become a validator in the network and look at the number of use cases that you have. Distributions was just one of it. I mean, there's others like loyalty, payment settlement, the whole area of digital identity or automation with smart contracts, or, like I said, the shared single source of truth.
I know digital identity is something you want to talk about in particular. Why? Why is that so important?
I think it's relevant for every company in the travel industry, because the EU, for example, they're working on a digital identity for EU citizen, and they want to have 80% of the EU citizen digital identities by 2030. So it's coming. So this is a trend that you need to look at anyway, and that will be blockchain based. And it will be relevant for Camino as well. So you might as well look at the technology now and reap the benefits, and experiment and reap the benefits early on. So
this digital identity future, you can leave the passport to one side. Is that the idea?
So what's imagined is that you have a wallet or a data container where you store different kind of data, whether your ID or passport or your diploma or your travel documents, and then you as a customer decide what to share with the respective organizations. And the EU actually has an example with Happy Air, where you log on with your wallet or data container, and then you share the loyalty data or identity data to actually complete the purchase.
Giving control back to the data owner, actually, isn't it?
We always had the discussion who owns the customer, or who owns the data of the customer, right? So the customer owns the data, his data. So the whole area of self-sovereign identity is truly, truly interesting for us in the future. Yeah.
Before we finish, just a quick word on how you feel about the industry at the minute. We're talking about aviation here in particular, but I know your founder is very much part of the travel industry, so you keep an eye on what's going on, prospects. There's a lot of positivity talked about this week. Where do you think the industry is in terms of its recovery from COVID, but also putting that into history and moving on from the pandemic?
Yeah, I think coming out of COVID, of course, the first priority is the operations and getting that well done, right? But I think there's an openness to look into the future, to look at the technologies. And I always say, AI and blockchain, these are tools for the further digital transformation to either decrease the cost or increase the loyalty of a customer, find new customers, increase revenues. So that's the main goal. And I think there's appetite in the industry to use those new technologies to get there.
Fine. Look, Anke, our time's up, but thanks very much for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Lee.
Yeah, face to face, excellent. So thanks for that, and we'll see you again in another one, I'm sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers.
Okay, so our next guest is Jay Abbott, who's Commercial Head for Travel and Airlines at Nuvei. Welcome, Jay. Are you enjoying the show so far?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for inviting me or having me.
That's okay. So you're exhibiting here this week. Tell us what you do first, and what are you hoping to get out of being at the show this week?
Okay, so what do? I basically coordinate commercial teams, mainly focused within Europe, Middle East and Africa, to install global payment systems for aviation. So you've got large airlines like Virgin, Turkish, these sort of things, WestJet. We install their global payment systems so that people can pay the way they would like to pay. Okay.
So that's a niche area, but it's very important. Why is payment so important for the airline industry? And what are they getting wrong currently, and why do they need to improve what they do?
I would say, why is it important? Because payments is the financial flow. It's the exchange of, let's say, the agreement in exchange for a service that's going to be delivered, and then the consumer or the traveller is going to pay the money. So it's the lifeblood of completing that transaction and delivery. And what are they missing in a lot of things? I would say airlines in general, they're doing a lot of good things right. It's just a matter about optimizing and making sure that their travellers, which is, their customers, are the focus, so that they can transact and complete their transactions in a very timely, speedy manner, as smooth as possible.
What are you seeing in the key trends in the payment sector then? I mean, it's obviously there's loads more ways to pay. We want to pay on mobile. We want it to be seamless.
Yep.
But at the same time, you've got new regulations around security and cyber and all that stuff. So what are the key trends that aviation companies need to look out for?
I think let's say this, Nuvei, we're fairly new to the space within the aviation travel payment sector. We've got global coverage for a lot of things, but we're about 4 years into this. And I think there's a lot of other players that are sitting there before, but I think looking for partners that are very innovative, that actually know how to build with you and work with you is really important. Where is it going, and what are the sort of key trends that are happening? I think what you're seeing now is a lot of the airlines, particularly the larger ones, are actually now educating us, the payments providers, on how to do things in that way. So we were brought in originally as their partners to do things, and the sharing of information is becoming a lot richer. Mm-hmm. And then naturally data sets. You see the mixing of data, technology, those things, AI, stuff like that, enables us to do things a lot faster, a lot more efficient. And these sort of things are going to expand dramatically in the future. Yeah.
There's a lot of talk about AI. I don't know if you caught the sessions on the second day with the CEOs on the main stage, but AI was asked. They were asked about that continually.
Yeah.
Get their views on it. Most said are fairly relaxed about AI coming to their businesses. In fact, I think Tim Clark from Emirates said they've been using it for 10 years. As somebody who sees technology develop, where do you see AI playing a role? Should we fear it? Should we embrace it?
I think AI, like, it's already out there, so they're quite correct. Fear it, you can, and that's certainly understandable. If I've watched, for example, a TV series about it's on YouTube called AlphaGo, and it's probably the most complicated game in the world, and the AI beats like the best of the best. And I think where they're going to go with these sort of things, I expect in the next 2 to 3 years it's going to be exceptionally changing, just based on computer power, what we can do. I think the introduction, obviously, with ChatGPT, you can see these sort of programs. It's going to make, I think it's going to revolutionize what we actually do, and I don't know what's going to come. I'm optimistic for it. I don't know where we will be, but I'm looking forward to see what's going to unpack here.
Yeah, you're an optimist.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like technology.
Love it.
Would do.
Love it. Yeah.
Apart from technology and AI, what of the other themes do you think have been mentioned this week so far?
In the payment space, I mean, one of the main sort of themes is looking at, we've got so many different platforms that are that are linking us to the customer's journey. So I think some of the main themes we are really discussing or talking around is how we can simplify for the airlines ways that they can integrate into us, because it's often can be quite messy. Going into different parts of those things, and then you're going to get, let's call it, certain platforms or layers that are actually hoping to simplify those, and we call those payments orchestration platforms. And these are a big trend coming around at the moment. They've been around for a while, but I think they're here to stay.
There's a number of exhibitors who are here today who just do that.
Yeah,
and
correct.
You've got to play a part in that, because that's where the ecosystem comes together, and you're one of the players within that.
Correct. We're actually, you could say, confused or a hybrid, however you want to label it. We do both. So we do payments orchestration for a part, because we've got all of these connective partners. I mean, Nuvei has 634 alternative payment methods, and these are global. It's the largest platform doing it. We do all the Visa, MasterCard stuff as well, so we naturally have already some sort of payments orchestration, because we link into all these different partners. So we do a combination of those. We link into the different travel platforms and stuff as well. But we can play both sides. That's the thing. That's why I said we are a bit of a hybrid, or we're confused in a way, because if we need to do it that way, we'll go that way. If we need to do the payments orchestration side, we can also play that role too.
Seems like interoperability is it's a difficult word to say, but it's the key here when it comes to technologies, because no one's going to build everything themselves, but everything needs to work with everybody else.
That's it. Exactly that. Interoperability is certainly the way to look, and I think that's another core theme, absolute another core theme now. So you need to, we're a Canadian company, stock listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, things like that, but very I would say that the approach for Nuvei, it's an open garden approach. We don't mind how we get you there. You can either go on our rails or you can go on others' rails, but we want to play a role in helping to connect the traveller to complete their journey and transact.
And before we finish, just some thoughts on aviation as a whole. Again, a lot of positive noises from the CEOs this morning about where demand is. It seems to be very resilient post-COVID. Few problems around the business traveller, but that is coming back slowly. But leisure seems to be going really well, and no fears about the future, even with fuel prices rising. So, what's the sense what sense do you get about how the industry's faring and where we're going next year?
Good question. Where are we going next year? It's traveller's back. Yeah. So aviation's back. Planes are packed. People had concerns around the rising prices that were going on, but you just see that people are adapting to this as well. Organisation, like you said, on the business side of things, it's coming back a little bit slower overall. But I'm super optimistic about where we're going, what we're going to do. I love this industry. I really enjoy the whole. We know each other from the travel space and now the airline aviation side of things as well. But I would just echo the sentiments of all the CEOs and stuff like that. I think it's really a cool space to look at, and just follow the technology, follow the travel, follow what we're going to be doing here for the future. It's going to be really cool.
And a final word on events like this, getting together and doing business face to face.
Yeah.
Really core part of the industry, key for the industry to do that, do you think?
This is hugely important, and maybe I'm a bit old school on some of those things as well. I know we're adapting to the whole Teams, meetings, those sort of things, and now we're doing the podcast here. But I don't think you can beat sitting with someone, shaking hands, and actually having a level of physical connection, all the cues and stuff that you have it. So I love these sort of things. My team and I are super excited to be here. We were at the last event, so I can only say for the World Aviation Festival, this is a very well organised and run event.
Yeah. All about being present.
Yeah. Agreed.
Jay, lovely. Good to see you.
Thank you.
All the best. Thanks a lot.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Okay, so I'm joined now by Jitendra Sidwani, who's the president of IBS Software. Yeah. Welcome, Jitendra, to Lisbon and to the World Aviation Festival.
Thank you for having me here.
Just start by telling us a little bit about why you're here this week. What do you hope to get out of attending a show like this?
This is one of the biggest events, in the industry. And if you look at, there are more than 5,000 participants. Actually, I was looking at the list of the companies, and it's amazing to see that every airlines and associated partner is represented here. So it's good meeting of minds, as I would call it, where there is a lot of cross-learning that's expected. And when I was looking at the agenda also, it's leaning a lot towards where the industry should really go from here. How do you become a more modern digital airline, focused in the future, rather than trying to solve the near-term, short-term problems. It's looking really at the long-term prospects. So looking at the agenda, that's very inspiring, and most of the conversations are also going to be around that. So it's a good learning opportunity, and good to meet a lot of my colleagues as well. And
inevitably, at something like this, people are looking to the future, and tech, digitization, AI, and things like that really are going to be the future. They are going to be what brings the industry into the modern age. Right. So what kind of topics are you expecting to hear this week?
I think retailing is going to be a big buzzword, because if you really look at traditionally, the airlines has been talking more about trying to change, looking at one order NDCs of the world, but the change really never happened in a proper way. Now it's really inevitable. If I look at taking cues from some of the other industries. I used to work at telecom industry for almost 10 years plus, and I saw a big transformation happening from telecom players becoming data-centric or network-centric to moving towards customer-centricity, right? The move towards omni-channel and all that happened. I see the same happening in the airlines industry now. Like, they're really getting ready for that change. So retailing is going to be a big buzzword. AI is another big buzzword, though not everybody understands AI in its true meaning and what benefits it's going to bring, but definitely the part about AI, ML, etc. is going to be a very, very important aspect.
Let's dive into that while you mentioned AI, because there is a lot of fear maybe about AI. I mean, and some serious people have come out and said, people who've built AI and said, we're worried about what it means for the future. From your perspective as a technologist, what does AI mean to you?
I think there is an extreme view, which is a scary view, which is, the world driven by movie like Terminators, etc. I don't think we're anywhere close to that. I think if you take the concepts of AI and even things like ML, etc., right, there is a lot of efficiency, a lot of changes that you can bring into the picture. For example, creating a personalized, travel experience for you as a traveler. AI and ML will play a big role over there. That's just one example. Getting the pricing right is another part, right? Fulfilling the service in a true manner. If you look at the whole value chain, right from you giving an offer to the customer to fulfilling the experience and post that, AI ML is going to play a lot of role in enhancing that experience, let's put it there. So I don't think there's anything to really worry about. Yes, how you absorb that will be left a lot to where you are in your journey and how you're going to, willing to invest in that bucket. So, But I don't think it's anything scary about it.
No, the robots aren't coming for us quite yet.
Robots will be used, but I think they'll be coexisting with people. I don't think suddenly you'll see people losing their job. But yes, then one thing that's going to be very important. I think the next workforce of airlines have to be more digital oriented. It's not just left to the IT people to be thinking about, hey, you know what? They are the only ones that you expect to know about digital and technology. I think the whole workforce will have to be oriented in a manner where you appreciate technology a lot better than before. So that change would be definitely needed.
Yeah, actually there's a stand out there today, Kobiot X, and they've got robots on the stand.
I saw that.
Wandering around, doing their own thing. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Actually, I saw it in one of the lounges recently. I was sitting in the lounge, and I live in Washington, D.C. In one of the lounges, I won't name the company. It's unfair for me to highlight one over the other, but I saw the robots actually picking the leftover, plates and all that, and actually moving around in the whole lounge area without any human intervention. So some aspects of that have already started to kick in.
Yeah, amazing. So look, before you mentioned a few jargon words like one order, and you've got offer order and all this stuff. In the aviation industry and travel in general, it's very good at creating a whole new language to describe what it's doing. In layman's terms, if anyone's listening to this who doesn't really want to get into the jargon, you mentioned retailing.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is simply, I guess, the airline industry operating like Amazon.
You basically got it right. You basically look at it in a way that, hey, I'm a traveler who's coming to you to buy a travel need. Right? I'm not just here for ticket. I want ticket, I want the right seat, I want to buy internet, I want to buy food, I want to buy hotel. My needs are plenty now, right, when I'm making a travel. Now, you as a provider have to look at that part holistically and say that, can I fulfill your need? And also, can I personalize it for you? You have to go one step forward, right? Like that, hey, I'm a this age person of this profile, I like to play golf, I like to do these things, and if I'm going to a certain area, can I make him an offer related to golf, for example, right, when I'm staying at that place? Now, that kind of personalization is what is going to be needed. So yes, so there's one part of setting a platform for you to fulfill my needs, but the important piece is going to be how much are you going to personalize for me. Yeah. But in layman terms, yes, you are kind of, I don't know whether I should call it Amazon of travel industry, but you would basically call it a platform which can fulfill a much bigger need of my travel rather than just selling me tickets.
And it's doing e-commerce, really. We're used to that, aren't we, in other sectors?
Yes, and we've seen a lot of the transformation happen. As I was saying, I spent a lot of time in the telecom industry. For one of the large players in the US, I was personally involved in the transformation from a very network infrastructure-centric view to a customer-centric omni-channel view, right? So that shift I've seen happening in the other industries.
Yeah. Explain how IBS Software is helping with this transition. What do you do that is going to help airlines to meet those challenges of the future?
So IBS is on the forefront of the technology, providing the technology platform for travel industry as a whole. We're just not looking at, we basically cater to airlines. We also cater to hospitality industry. We also cater to travel and cruise industry. So we're looking at a complete holistic view of the industry. And we have 5 big platforms that we bring to the market. 3 of them are focused at aviation, 2 of them are focused at the travel and cruise and the hotel industry. Now, on the aviation side, we're just not looking at the retailing side. That's one bucket of us, where we bring, the reservation, the retailing, and the loyalty and all of those platforms to the table. We have second bucket, which is focusing on the operations piece. Now, that's a big piece, because one thing that everybody's forgetting is that as you move into the modern retailing world, you need to fulfill the service, which means your operations area, of how you run your flights and how you run your systems has to fundamentally undergo change also. Otherwise, you'll be selling me an experience, but you'll not be fulfilling me. So that's the second platform that we have, where we again work with many airlines globally, transforming them from, very old operations to absolutely brand new digital operations now. We're doing that for a lot of airlines today. And the third bucket is we are also present in the cargo space. In fact, we are a market leader in that space where we manage the end-to-end cargo operations for most of the large airlines in the world. So those are the three platforms that are focused on the aviation. The other two are more focused on the hospitality and travel and cruise side that I can talk at some point in time later.
Yeah. I suppose fundamentally what all this does is make the operations of these businesses, very large businesses, huge logistical businesses, more efficient. And of course, everyone wants to be more efficient because that goes to the bottom line and makes you more profitable.
Absolutely. And our philosophy is very simple. And in talking about the digitization and keeping all the buzzwords aside, right? Can you source digitally when you're running your business? Can you manage your business digitally? And can you serve me digitally? I think if you look at the total value chain from that perspective, we're basically present in all of those value chain and transforming all of those pieces of the value chain. That's what IBS is bringing to the table.
Yeah. And when you think about, I guess, the aviation industry in general, but actually life in general, there's a lot of digitization happening.
Yeah.
But the human element is still there as well. What role do you think humans play? We talked about robots earlier. The humans aren't going to go away, and actually service is best provided by a human being. Where do the
humans will stay? I think we have survived millions of years. I was reading that book Sapiens. I always recommend that for everybody to read it. We will survive. I think the important thing is what role will we play? And are we getting trained to play that role? Because in the new digital world, and actually, you know what, we are evolving with it. If you look at, earlier we were talking about our kids, right? My son is 18-year-old, a lot more technology savvy than what I was at that age and even I am at this age, right? So the future workforce is anyway digital savvy. So they know what skill sets they will be bringing to the table. The important thing for the corporations and airlines, and that's true for every industry, will be how do you make that skill relevant for them? What do you train them on? And how do you absorb them into the corporate then? I think that's going to be the key here. So the roles will change, but humans will survive.
Yeah, I'm sure. In the time we've got left, just a few thoughts on the sector in general, where we are at the moment in terms of its recovery from COVID. Mm-hmm. I think we're a couple of years out now from the worst of it, but obviously the impacts are going to be long felt in the industry. I think we lost 3 or 4 years of growth, and that's going to have an impact on any sector, never mind one so reliant on people travelling around the planet. Where do you think we are? There's 5,000 people here this week, as you said. It seems very positive. Is that the feeling you get, but still major challenges ahead?
Challenges will always be there, but I think the direction of the industry is a very good direction right now. In a sense, pandemic actually has become an advantage because it put a pause button for you to really look at who you are and where you're going. Each company had to do that, and then the industry as a whole had to do that also. The result of that is that some of the innovation has started to accelerate. You're also looking at customer in a very different view because you're now realizing that coming out of pandemic that your customer is no longer the customer what it used to be. It's a lot more digital savvy customer. The demographics of the customer has changed a lot. So it gave you an opportunity to really look at a lot of issues in a much more comprehensive manner now. So from that perspective, I see a lot better readiness of the airlines. And to that, and if you also add to that fact that travel is coming back in a big way and a lot more people are traveling, I see planes being absolutely full, actually oversold flights. That's all a very, very good sign, which means that the demand is not a problem. It's how you address that demand in a very, very proper manner that's going to be the key. So I think if I look at next 5 to 10 years, the industry has a very bright future. Yeah.
What do you think is the biggest challenge? The airline industry has got multiple challenges. Sustainability has to be up there. One of the biggest. You said demand's there, but equally people are more concerned about their impact.
Absolutely.
So that must be one. But digitalization is another.
So if you look at there are 3-4 things. One is sustainability. You always talked about, and that's a different topic because that's a podcast on its own as to what airlines should do. But that's definitely an area. The other area is how do they transform themselves to become a travel provider rather than a ticket seller, right? As I would call it. That's the second big thing. Now, retailing, operations, all of that area is part of that bucket, right? Third is how do you stay commercially feasible? I mean, a lot of airlines still,
not making enough money.
Not making enough money.
Yep.
That's a fact actually. So I think keeping that lens is going to be very, very important because from one side there is inflation, the costs are going up. The human cost has gone up a lot in the last few years. So bringing that commercial, I would say, lens in a very, very holistic manner and looking at a long-term view is going to be very, very important.
Yeah.
So those are three big challenges that airlines will face.
And a final word on events like this and why it's important people get together at an event like this. There's obvious advantages, but why is it important we do this so regularly?
For me, this is meeting of minds, right? I see a lot of my colleagues here, and a lot of our partners here. So I think if you don't create these kind of forums, there is not very clear picture that you can paint for the industry. Like these forums are really meant to create a picture for the industry, which everybody can find a place in, and also learn from each other. So definitely a lot more than before this is needed. I don't think we should have a lot more though. We should have good quality ones. Like this one is one of the good ones that I personally feel has the right agenda also. But yes, the events will definitely be needed. Yeah, it's good for inspiration as well. Absolutely. You go away with lots of ideas. Oh yeah.
Look, Jitendra, thanks for joining us. Our time is up, unfortunately, but thanks for joining us on our first ABNcast, and look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Sure, thank you. I'll be happy to speak again.
Thanks very much.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
So what's great about coming to events like this overseas is that you bump into people you know back from the UK. So I'm delighted now to be joined by Robert Goldsmith, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Interlnkd. Welcome, Robert, to the World Aviation Festival.
Thanks, Lee. Good seeing you again.
So why are you here? What has Interlnkd got that the airlines need, and what are the conversations you're hoping to have during the next 3 days?
Yeah, good question. I mean, as you know, the business is essentially a startup. We're looking at really creating more awareness and visibility about what we do as a brand and as a business, and obviously a solution. I think obviously with our Interlnkd, what we do, we are brand new for the industry. So essentially where we position ourselves is the industry's only intelligent shopping mall solution. So we are tapping into that customer data, trying to monetize that customer experience, and give the airlines, especially World Aviation, a chance to understand how to earn revenue, additional revenue streams, and actually tap into a new experience for their customers. So for us, it's about education for here. And when you're trying to pitch, I guess, something brand new to the industry, it becomes a lot of challenges. So our main idea for this is keep plodding away, keep doing it, see who else we can talk to. And the airline space, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of red tape. Conversations take a long time. So we're just we're excited to kind of get more conversations going and understand, make people aware of what we do.
Yeah, we just heard from Jitendra from IBS Software. He was talking about the need for airlines, the aviation sector in general, to be better at retailing, to be better at e-commerce, to be a bit more like Amazon in terms of the way they approach the consumer. Seems from outside, it seems like an obvious thing to do. Why is it so difficult for the aviation industry to grasp this?
It's funny. I mean, it's a good point because I think we've heard the same, for a while now. I think we've attended quite a few conferences, exhibitions, and we hear the same in terms of personalisation, relevance, intelligence. All these kind of buzzwords keep getting kind of thrown about in terms of we must do better, we must keep that customer engaged, the loyalty play, etc., etc. I think some of the challenges certainly are when you've got such mammoth and giant businesses as the airlines is trying to integrate something new. Takes a lot of manpower, resource, a lot of red tape, a lot of different departments. We found personally in terms of the integration, so we offer a kind of an integration options via APIs or a zero integration option as well. And the reason we created the zero integration approach was purely because integration queues were 12, 18 months, 2 years long. So they've obviously got their own kind of post-COVID recovery roadmap or whatever they want to implement. So there's a lot of challenges of red tape, but ultimately it's they've done what they've done for so long, and the ancillary revenue piece, and I include retailing in that element, is such a large piece of the pie for the airlines. Is trying to piece something else in that door can become very challenging.
I suppose if I'm an airline and I've got however many aircraft, very complex, difficult things to operate, flying around the world, it's such a logistical nightmare in many ways. We're coming out of COVID, so am I going to really be focused on this area unless someone makes it very easy for me? And that's guess what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Simplicity is the key, and that's what we try and ultimately position ourselves within the airline industry, is keep it as simple as we possibly can do. Again, zero integration. We do all the heavy lifting. It's all fully kind of customized experiences on the airlines, as a white label solution. But even so, we can take as much heavy lifting without the equation as possibly we can do. It's still timing, resource, sign-offs, etc., etc. It can still be quite an extensive process.
So paint a picture for the listener about exactly what a customer experience looks like with an aviation business that works with you guys. You're post-booking, but pre-travel. So what happens in that period?
Yeah, so we aim to kind of tap into that grey area which hasn't been utilised previously. So, you've got your duty free in the airport, you've got your onboard retail. Obviously, that's limited in terms of what they can carry, of course, but generally it's that inspirational phase of how an airline's customer will ultimately shop for the products they will need and want for the holidays or trips they purchase with the airline, but also hit that sweet spot about 6 to 8 weeks before departure. So when they're in an inspirational phase of thinking, actually, here's a reminder, and we can either partner with the airline to send emails on their behalf, which is fully curated, so it comes up with the right products, matches the right products at the right time based on their requirements, so based on where they're going, how much they've spent, time of year, gender, etc., etc. So it seamlessly matches exactly their trip details. So it's about positioning that product in front of the customer and ultimately giving the airline a new experience for their own customers, and doing something which is not just kind of, okay, well, yeah, you're going to Rome and here's a ski jacket. It doesn't quite work. The relevance of personalisation is absolutely critical for this.
Yeah.
So that's
I suppose as a travel business, as an airline or an OTA, once that purchase has been made, you actually know quite a lot about that customer, what they want to do. As you suggested, if they've booked a ski holiday, they're going skiing. There's a lot of purchases that are related to that trip, and that's just one example. If you went on a cruise, you're going to need certain things.
Yep.
So there's a lot about the customer, and so you can personalise what you offer them. Is this what this is about then?
Correct. It's all about giving that customer the relevant products for that trip, which is bespoke to them. Personalisation, relevance, but ultimately the intelligence is the key part. I mean, it sounds very simple to say, okay, well, we're just going on a beach holiday, here's a pair of shorts, here's a pair. It's not quite as simple as that. It's ultimately, yes, they go on a beach holiday, but understanding the price point, understanding what do they actually want, what are they actually going to need, what are they go shopping for. And plenty of times we see, as you come onto that data point, we see a lot of people when they go through to our shopping, or like the white label shopping facility or the shopping marketplace as we call it, they might click through on a pair of swim shorts, end up buying a pair of sunglasses. So it's about the customers or the consumers will shop regardless, but it's about the airlines tapping into that area which hasn't been monetised yet for them.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is in it for the airlines? And I suppose it's, well, look, I possibly generated that shopping behaviour. There's a lot more shopping behaviour happening outside of the purchase of the flight. Why shouldn't I benefit from what I've effectively generated? So that is where you're linking the sales to the original airline or holiday sale.
Absolutely. It's all about, hence the name, Interlink. It's all about the interlinking of fashion, beauty and retail with the travel industry. We didn't want to go down the route of insurance. eSIM is quite a hot topic at the moment. There's a lot of ancillaries out there which has been done and dusted, and it works and it's great. But something new, which is you've sold them the trip, exactly, everything about them, but you don't sell them the products they're going to need for that trip.
Yeah.
It seems bizarre. It's a very, very simple concept, but it seems bizarre that no one's done this.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're at.
Yeah. Does this have the potential to build a lot more new kind of brand affiliations? So, like for instance, Emirates might suddenly realise that a customer of Emirates, would really like to buy a certain type of watch or car. So you can build those kind of shared customer personas.
Absolutely. I think the data is and will become become more valuable than what it is today. Certainly, to understand. The types of behaviour that we see. We did a release recently in terms of the average customer spending throughout the summer months, in terms of what people spend on their holiday, what they spend based on destination, what are they buying by destination, what are they buying per spend category, because obviously people spend a various degree of money based on their travel. So you start to kind of pull back and get a very accurate picture of a customer going to Dubai spending £500 is predominantly going to buy X, Y, and Z. And you can work it back, and then you have that kind of, not to give away too much, but then you can do a lot of affiliation with that data in terms of giving that data back to the travel customers, back to the airline, and saying that this is what these people are buying based on destination.
You said at the beginning you're a startup,
yep.
Startup based in the UK. for the listener, just give us an idea of what it feels like to be a startup. Everyone talks about startups as though it's really exciting and always on the go and everything. But is it really that exciting? Is it nerve-wracking being a startup? And how do you get the support and the money to get you through those early years?
Yeah, good question. It's you've got to have thick skin, 100%. You've got to have thick skin. It is a roller coaster. I think when you haven't got that security blanket of a big business and corporation that's going to look after you, hopefully look after you no matter what. But I think we will understand, and certainly my co-founders have understood, certainly through COVID times and coming out of COVID, that even working for a big corporate, that security isn't really there. But certainly, to drive in a new product or new solution in this industry is exceptionally challenging. The awareness, the visibility of what we do takes a lot of knocking on doors, a lot of outreach, business development, and it's like juggling plates at a circus.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. But that's the fun part. I think we've all enjoyed, in terms of the co-founders, in terms of in the business we've been in, being able to juggle multiple elements, and that could be something as simple as paying an invoice or paying the accountant, or going out and then speaking to airlines or doing it. So no 2 days are the same. Sometimes you might have this week doesn't look there's too much going on, but there's always something happening. Always something happening, and every week it seems like we're coming up with a new idea or a new way to position the business, a new solution, new product, new idea. And a lot of that's fed back from the conversations that we have with potential clients and certain partners in the industry. Can you do this? Can you do that? And we can pivot. But then we have a chat with our CTO. He's like, "What are you guys doing to me? This is crazy." So we've got grand plans and grand visions for the business, and I think certainly, and the next 6 months will be very exciting in terms of what we've just kind of accomplished. In terms of, we just closed an investment round, which was north of 7 figures, which was amazing for the business, and we've got some really cool stuff in the pipeline, which will come out in probably by early next year, which will really. Should cement the business and give some strong foundations, hopefully.
And everything you said is probably why you come to events like this, actually, to have those conversations with the big players in the industry. Do you sense, particularly post-COVID, when all businesses had to look at what they were doing and sort of really narrow down on what was part of their core business, do you feel there's a bigger appetite now to work with startups in areas where it's not core to their business, and therefore they're more open to working with a third party?
Really good question. I think it depends on the business in terms of the type of business. I see some, and not just in the airline sector, certainly in other areas of travel. I think there's some really innovative businesses out there in terms of travel businesses, certainly airlines as well. Really people who actually want to absorb and have the appetite to understand what a company like Interlnkd does. On the other hand, I think there's some businesses who have still potentially got their head in the sand, and sometimes if it's not broke, don't fix it attitude, which is fine. But hopefully, if we get enough exposure, and time on stages, and et cetera, then as long as they understand and hear about us, then that's okay. That's all we can really do. But I think the challenges is tapping into those people who are innovative, who are actually looking at new third-party solutions, new what's going on in the industry, and keeping their finger on the pulse, which I don't think is that easy to do.
Yeah.
But certainly that's the challenge is finding those areas.
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
Well, look, as a fellow Brit, I wish a young startup from Britain all the best this week as you try to do exactly that during World Aviation Festival. Just finish off just the final question about where you feel the industry is at the minute. This week we're going to focus on aviation in particular, which is really, to be fair, it's the core of the travel industry.
Yeah.
Where do you think we're at in terms of recovery from COVID, that terrible period where so much damage was done to the sector? Do you think it's behind us, or do you think there's still a bit of a hangover from that?
I think there's still a little bit of a hangover, and I think that mainly probably comes from the kind of operational logistics side of it as well. Even yesterday, you've got all the stuff that's going on at Gatwick Airport in terms of the air traffic controllers, etc. So I still just think there's maybe a slight hangover. I think it's certainly rebounded, a lot quicker than people anticipated. And I certainly see from what we see on our side of the fence, dealing with the fashion, beauty, and retail space, these brands are almost clamouring to work with the travel industry because they see that the recovery recovery has been so great on our side. But I still think there's a slight hangover to a degree. But as I say, I can only look from our side of the fence, and those brands are really desperate to work with some of the biggest names in the travel industry. They can't get that; they're using us to access those, which is great. So we see, and they're obviously having quite a tough time of it at the moment. But yeah, slight hangover. But I think it's in a very, very good spot considering of where it was 3 years ago for sure.
Yeah. Well, I hope we'll hear lots of positive thoughts this week at the World Aviation Festival in Lisbon. Thanks very much, Robert, for joining us on ABNcast, and we'll catch up again soon, sure.
Thanks, Lee. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Thanks.
And that brings our first ABNcast to a close. Thanks to everybody who took part, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Some good news before we finish. After speaking to Robert from Interlnkd, they were named winners of this year's World Aviation Festival Startup Competition. So congratulations to Robert and the team at Interlnkd. Stay tuned for more editions of ABNcast, and don't forget to check out all our latest coverage of the aviation sector on www.aviationbusinessnews.com.